Yeah, I think it's really nice.
Because another perspective was I took the cheapest, fastest, easiest. That was my perspective. I want to contribute, but I think something that I can change.
If you didn't pick rice, I would have made rice and salad. I'm so glad I choose salad and not like let vegan choose salad because.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. It's January 11th, 2020. We're reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 14, entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. Yay. Exactly. Text 6. Yeah, that's aesthetically presented here. Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Cha Anagha Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sangena Padnati
Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat
Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakashakam Anamayam Sukha Sangena Vadnati. Jnana Sangena Chanana. If anyone on internet would like to recite.
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat
Rakashaka Manamayam
Rakashakamanamaya
Sukha Sangena Badnati
Sukha Sangena Vadnati
Jnana Sangena Chanaga
Jnana Sangena Chanaga
Tatra.
Tatra
Thereafter. Sattvam.
Sattvam
Mode of goodness.
Mode of goodness
Nirmalatvat.
Nirmalatvat
Being purest in the material world.
Being purest in the material world
Prakashakam.
Prakashakam
Illuminating.
Illuminating
Anamayam.
Anamayam
Without any sinful reaction.
Without any sinful reaction
Sukha.
Sukha
Happiness.
Happiness
Sangena.
Samena
Association.
Association
Vadnati.
Vanasi
Conditions.
Condition
Jnana. Knowledge.
Knowledge
Sangena.
Sangena
Association.
Association
Cha.
Cha
Also.
Also
Anaga.
Ananda
O sinless one. Translation. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge. They become conditioned by the concept of happiness. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The living entities conditioned by material nature are various types. One is happy, another is very active, and another is helpless. All these types of psychological manifestations are causes of the entity's conditioned status in nature. How they are differently conditioned is explained in this section of Bhagavad Gita. The mode of goodness is first considered. The effect of developing the mode of goodness in the material world is that one becomes wiser than those otherwise conditioned. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries, and he has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The representative type is the Brahmin, who is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. The sense of happiness is due to understanding that in the mode of goodness, one is more or less free from sinful reactions. Actually, in the Vedic literature, it is said that the mode of goodness means greater knowledge and a greater sense of happiness. The difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are the scientist and philosopher. Each is very proud of his knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness in conditioned life makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As such, they are attracted toward working in the mode of goodness, and as long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of birth and death. But due to the illusion of the material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant. Hare Krishna. Om Ganatimirandasya Dinanjan Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamstam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Vishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Saganalalita Shri Vishakanvitam Stra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopka Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhano Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Panchakalpata Yubhyashta Kripa Sindhu Vyeva Tva Paititanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Hastracha Desha Tarine Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakasha Kamanamayam Sukha Sangena Padnati Jnana Sangena Chanaga. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. Yesterday morning, after morning program at Prasadam, we were discussing it today. I'm going to give a talk entitled Creating a Sattvic Home. Some members of the assembly just started laughing. I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to say names.
You're not here.
Well,
I trust your really close
someone's trusting. Yeah, so the original idea of this program, Hare Krishna, Rebecca. The original idea was like weeks ago. Kayal invited me. The idea was I was going to go to someplace else. And my vision was like there'd be these people who don't know me. And then okay, so this is David Wolf is speaking on creating a Sattvic home. So the assumption would be his level of creating a Sattvic home must be like way up there. But so here I am right in this home and people who know my habits. And makes the whole thing a little challenging. So okay, so we'll stick. We did the Mangala Charan, starting with Om Ganatamiranandasya. We did the Mangala Charan. So the Mangala Charan is kind of like the idea with Mangala Charan is like hopefully the idea of the Mangala Charan is that hopefully I won't let myself get in the way. That's the essence of the Mangala Charan. That hopefully I will not let myself get in the way, and that I will allow myself to be an instrument for many. There's many personalities in that Mangala Charan. Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, Lalita and Vishaka, Sri Advaita, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, Radharani. There's many personalities, and these personalities, they want us to hear something. And so the Mangala Charan is like, may I be an instrument for that and not let my ego get in the way. So this verse is clearly about sattva. It doesn't directly talk about home. There are many verses that talk about home. So as far as the home aspect, well, okay, the principle really is the principle is ashram. And ashram, I don't know much about Sanskrit, but ashram is the root there is essentially means shelter. Mahatmanastu Mahaparta Devim Pakim Ashra. Vajantinyani Mani So Gata Buddha Di Abhi Ashri. So it means that the great souls, the Mahatmas, the truly great souls, they take shelter of Krishna's internal energy, Devi shelter. So that's why, there's these terms like Brahmacharya ashram, Grahastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, Sannyas ashram. So it means that whatever our stage of life, that to not be artificial, Krishna says in chapter 3, Krishna says in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, what can repression accomplish? Don't be a pretender. You're a warrior. I don't like that. So not to be artificial. At the same time, to move towards cultivating the ashram consciousness. Ashram consciousness means more and more. Well, I'm looking at Anne. So there's an example. So it was several years ago. No, really, I'm gonna tell you what. So several years ago, Anne was. Now I remember your whole process was like, okay, here's the master bedroom. So we're going to transform the consciousness. So that this is the master's room. So the master bedroom became this is where you have Radha, Krishna, Prabhupada. This is forgotten. So that's ashram consciousness. So that's the essence, because that's BG14. That's the being. That's the consciousness. And then maybe as our hour goes on, we'll talk about some aspects of the doing, and that. It starts though with being. We want to cultivate. We want to move towards cultivating the being, the consciousness. This is not my home. This is not my home. It's the home of Sri Sri Radha Shamasundara. This is from the Srila Prabhupada. We don't want to artificially do that because, most human beings, even those seeking spiritual progress at some large juncture of life, I want the idea of this is my home and this is where I have security. At the same time, we want to move towards that ashram of truly spiritual consciousness. And then to the extent that we're in that consciousness, then actually we'll do things that please the actual master, the actual owner, Ishavasana Dharam Sarvam, to get into the actual control. Right. And so I guess it's like starting with a BG14 pattern. So it's the consciousness. Rather than get into, as far as to create a Sattvic home, here's eating, here's what we do with the TV, there's that, but it starts with consciousness. It starts with consciousness. Actually, in the Korea, when I put on the AC, it's January in Florida, so it's in the 80s. So yeah. Okay, but if it does get too hot, you can put on the AC. If it gets too, for me, it's fine. Okay. So the 7th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is very interesting. That there's the start of that chapter is oft quoted by Srila Prabhupada, and it's about Srila Vyasadev's samadhi, and his transformed consciousness that led Bhagavatam. So Srila Vyasadeva, he is the author, the compiler of Bhagavatam, and the main speaker of Bhagavatam is Shukadeva Goswami. His consciousness is also described there, and their consciousnesses they're canvassing on the same page, to use that term. So the main speaker and the author, their consciousness is aligned. Right? It's aligned with source, full realization of source. Anyhow, where that chapter starts, in the very first verses, it talks about, in chapters 6, 5, and 4, Vyasadeva had his conversation with Narada Muni, his spiritual master. And then beginning of chapter 7, Vyasadeva, he's in his ashram. He's in his ashram. It's on the banks of the Sarasvati River. Described that he had his cottage on the banks of the Sarasvati, and all around there were berry trees. Described that. Berries, very auspicious. And anyhow, Prabhupada, interestingly, in his purports, he specifically talks about how Vyasadeva was a grahastha. He was not a sannyasi. He was not like his son, Shukadeva Goswami, who was an avadhuta. There's the pastime in Bhagavatam, also in the first canto. Where Shukadeva Goswami, so he was passing by, and he was avadhuta, means there's no rules and regulations. He's fully realized in connection with absolute truth. Now, most who are beyond rules and regulations, they follow them anyway to set an example. Srila Prabhupada is beyond rules and regulations. He's completely just loving Krishna. But he followed rules and regulations anyway to set an example. Yad yad acharati shreshtas tatad evitarojana. So pramanam kruti lokas tadanubhartate. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever actions influential people others will follow whatever standards they accept. So that wasn't, so Shukadeva Goswami, wasn't his service to follow those rules and regulations. So he was 16 years old, wandering around naked, that sort of thing. So he was passing by, and there was a pond, and there was young damsels bathing and swimming in the pond. And when he passed by, they didn't even bother to color themselves, because he didn't make distinctions. He didn't make distinctions. Like, he was just saying spirit, soul. But then when his father passed by, his father was sort of like chasing him, like, come home, come home. So that when his father passed by, he was Vyasadeva. I mean, this is no slouch. I mean, this is Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas. So when his father passed by, then the damsels, they immediately covered themselves. Because even though Vyasadeva is Vyasadeva, still, he was elderly, the whole thing. But still, he was in the Grahastha ashram. And so he makes distinctions. This is male, this is female. So Prabhupada made the point there in the purports at the beginning of the 7th chapter. That Vyasadeva was in his ashram, and Prabhupada really emphasizes that the ashram means any place where cultivation of true spiritual values is foremost. That's an ashram. We can think of ashram as a status of life with that. Ashram, the idea is so that we make our home a place where cultivation of spiritual culture, spiritual values, that's truly what's foremost. And then as we do that, more and more we realize, I'm just a tenant here, whether I'm paying a mortgage or rent, that's not the point. But I'm a tenant, and this is Krishna's place, this is for Srila Prabhupada's mission, for Lord Chaitanya's mission. So that's the essence of the consciousness for creating a Sattvic home. And Prabhupada made the point that, so even though Vyasadeva was a grahastha means you're entangled with things like insurance payments, and the roof needs to be fixed, and things like that. But it was such a sublime ashram. We can imagine how sublime that is on the banks of the Sarasvati. My understanding is the Sarasvati is now underground. It's no longer manifest, it's underground. And Betty trees in his cottage. And then he went into trance, bhakti yogena manasi, fully absorbed heart and soul in bhakti. And he had a direct experience of the absolute reality. And the direct experience of the absolute reality was not the undifferentiated oneness. It was not the void. It was not realizing that he is God. That's important, because this is the compiler of the Vedas. And so that was Sri Krishna in the back of Sri Krishna is Krishna's energy mind. Everyone's a servant of Krishna. So that's the compiler of the Vedas. And that's his direct realization, direct experience of absolute reality. And then from that comes the Bhagavad. And he saw Narto Pashamam Saksha Bhakti Yogam and Hokshaji. And he saw that the living entity is conditioned by Krishna's energy Maya. They're suffering because they're misidentifying spirit self with material body. They're misidentifying spirit with matter. As a result, always in fear and anxiety, always suffering. And then he saw, and the solution, Bhakti Yoga and Hokshaje, the solution to get rid of all these anartas, Anarto Pashamam Sakshat, the solution to get rid of all these anartas, to cleanse the heart, cleanse the mirror of the mind. The solution is Bhakti Yoga, Lokasya and Tadvivams, and he saw that people won't get it. Even with all these wonderful Vedas I've given, wonderful Vedas, his spiritual master just said, this is like garbage for crows. This is for the Vedas, for God's sake. This was not some cheap Harlequin romance. I mean, but never missing that. And so people won't get. As a result, Chakra Sattvic to something that he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam, the follow-up to Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada makes the point that so he's in Grahastha ashram at the same time it's a true ashram, where spiritual advancement takes place. Distinct distinction between spirit and matter. So that's the consciousness. And then So, okay, and then so this whole chapter is about the modes of nature, and the idea is sattva. Sattva is the best platform from which to cultivate transcendental devotional service. At the same time, there are some booby traps and pitfalls, and that's described here. The Sattvic trap. What's that? I use the word booby trap. So, text 17 is also about sattva. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. And then Prabhupada says, since the present civilization is not very congenial to the living entities, Krishna consciousness is recommended. Through Krishna consciousness, society will develop the mode of goodness. When the mode of goodness is developed, people will see things as they are. That's important. So what Prabhupada's saying there is, as we practice Krishna consciousness, our goodness increases. But sometimes we hear, like I just said, goodness is like it's a powerful, solid platform to cultivate Krishna consciousness. True. And we want to make part of our attempts at bhakti is to consciously cultivate sattvic qualities: tolerance, cleanliness, mercy, forgiveness, and honesty, and austerity, etc., etc. We want to, at the same time, from wherever we're at, in one sense for us this is even more important, from wherever we're at, in whatever mixture of the modes, we engage in the transcendental process of Krishna consciousness, the elevator of bhakti yoga that Prabhupada gave us. And that is the goal. The journey is the goal in bhakti yoga. And also, that will bring our level of sattva to a higher, steadier level. So it goes both ways. So through sattva, we're ready to cultivate transcendence, and by engaging in transcendence from wherever we're at, we cultivate sattva. So it goes both ways. Yes. So this whole, in the 1990s, I developed the Vedic personality inventory, the personality assessment for assessing the modes of nature, like that. And yeah, like an original thinking in doing that, the idea was to endeavor to demonstrate or research sattva as an empirical basis for happiness, or an empirical basis for all of the contract qualities, all of the qualities that happiness, security, fulfillment, balance, vibrancy, all of the contract qualities, that to the extent that we develop sattvic habits and a sattvic worldview, that will correlate positively with all those qualities. And the research confirms the Vedic conclusion in that regard. And so there's guidance actually, like about chapter 14, 17, 18 looks at about 19, 20 areas of life and says, here's what it looks like in tamas, here's what it looks like in rajas, here's what it looks like in sattva, here's what it looks like in transcendence. And then Bhagavatam goes more deeply into that. So we can and we ought to study the details for purposes of practical application. At the same time, you kind of like, one sense, well, how do I know? How do I know if what I'm doing is lower modes, tamas or rajas? Basically, the lower modes is when afterwards or during we're ashamed, we're embarrassed, and we feel we need to. Did you find that? Come on, we all know. And it's like when we feel kind of shame and embarrassment, and a lot of our life is numbing the shame and the embarrassment. That probably means we got some lower modes habits going on, stuff around concealment, things like that. It's really not a big mystery. I'm not discouraging us from studying it. Let us go into and become learn Bhagavad Gita and all the details, but we kind of have an intuition. And then as we raise our modes of nature towards sattva, it becomes more and more experientially apparent what the lower mode was. Actually, I recently had communications with someone, and it's kind of fresh for me right now. So she really like 9 months or a year, she really dove into bhakti practice and sattvic habits and like experimental. And she was like, she's glad she did it, but now she wants to go back to what she was, to the normal life. Because that's sort of the mantra we use. It's do it as an experiment, and then you can go back. It's just okay. I'm ready to go back now. But it's not working because and now she can yeah. It's pretty much ruined. Now it's pretty much ruined forever. Because now she tries to go back. But she had this whole year of intensive sattvic transcendental awareness, and so she's attuned to that. So trying to go back to just what she used to do.
It's your fault.
Yeah. That's why. She's clearing immediacy with me, withholds the whole thing. The whole thing, exactly. Yeah, that's what's happening. So yeah. Okay. So. Right. So sattva and transcendence, they go together, and we can in Prabhupada's teachings in the Vedas, Bhagavatam, first canto, there's a lot about what's called the sub-religious principles. Those are basically sattvic principles that support going towards transcendence. An example I think you all heard me use that sattva is like the airport. Raise your hand if you're familiar with sattva, like the airport metaphor. Okay. Yeah. That's it. So we want to cultivate sattva without making it the ultimate goal. We don't want to neglect it, and we don't want to make it the ultimate goal. Okay. And so some guidelines, the 4 kind of sattvic principles. Sometimes I would use the word sub-religious, because real religion, dharma, bhoji, dakoti, japam, sanam, satam, veda, vastava, mantra, vastu, shita, tapotrim, religion. Srimad Bhagavatam kicks out all koitava dharma, cheating religion. Religion is that love of God. That's actually the essence of spiritual life, real religion. And that includes realization of the non-personal oneness, and it includes super-soulization. So those 4 principles are austerity, cleanliness, mercy or compassion, and truthfulness. So those are, that's like guidelines. And so mercy, compassion, that, so directly relates to whether it's in our home or our bodies, what's the food we're eating? What's the food we're eating? Astani sahasthanam, apadanam, chatuspadam, palgonitacha, matam, jivo jivasi jivana. So in this world, one living entity is food for another. Violence is there. Right? Violence is there.
Right.
Violence of so many sorts, yes. And so, but then the idea is, some sattvic principle, mercy, compassion. So to nourish my body, let me minimize the violence. So that points as a vegetarian. Nice. Very nice. Same time, there's times when even in the early days, 1966, and Papa would be invited to speak at vegetarian societies in New York, which 50 some years ago was it was in USA a lot less common to be vegetarian maybe than nowadays. Papa, so he would appreciate vegetarian very nice. It's towards nonviolence, and he goes, and of course the pigeons are also vegetarian, as are the elephants, and so really it's a great accomplishment. So depending where we want to encourage or see, so the idea is vegetarian, sattvic principle, mercy, compassion, and then we can make it transcendental by committing only prasada. So mercy, austerity, that's it. Not Bhagavad Gita describes. We can do austerity in ignorance, in passion, in goodness, and transcendental. It's described in 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So rising early before sunrise. It's an austerity. It's a Sattvic austerity. And we rise early, and then we use that time for kirtan, for Bhagavad Gita, for singing Samsara Eva. It was a 2018 Thanksgiving. I've told the story in this assembly so much, but anyhow, so I was at the Thanksgiving table, and a cousin of my marriage named Mormon, I never got to know very well, but we've seen each other a few times since the 1980s. Since he married my cousin Ellen, and anyhow, so he was speaking to Eddie and Bill, and it was the whole thing. And anyhow, so I remember was saying, yes, and so I was saying, yeah, like for actually. Norman actually, he knows Gainesville very well. He went to undergrad, and I think he went to dental school, so he knows the place. But he was saying, for 30 years he can't sleep. He's somewhere. And then he goes, every morning I'm up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and I don't know what to do. So I read dental journals. So I'm like, oh my God.
What a lucky man.
You're up at 4 a.m. You're reading dental journals. So George's reaction. Very good. So, of course, I restrained myself. I didn't go, oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I was just, okay. So you're going to have a lot of anxiety. So you're up at 4 a.m. and you read dental journals. I was sort of restrained like that. And he said that decades ago, he tried some meditation and it didn't work so well. And so I calmly shared. I said, for about 35 years, I've been practicing a meditation practice. I'm very satisfied. If you'd like, I'll show it to you. He goes, sure, I'm ready. I'm ready to try anything, Didn't terms at 4 a.m., just getting going for too much longer, like that. And so after the Thanksgiving, then we went to the basement. My brother-in-law, Bobby, who passed away a few weeks ago, he actually, because I was going to take Norman to the room where I was staying, but Bobby said, no, go to the basement because it's bigger. So because he could see David has something valuable. He really supported us. So Norman and I, with Abby was there. Abby was like door guard. so Abby and I, and then for 3 consecutive days, Norman came at 5 a.m. and we did full morning program. The first day, chant 16 rounds, complete out-of-body experience. Abby and I, we were like, oh yeah, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We know how to chant. But for Norman, it was just fresh experience, and he didn't know what was happening.
Wow.
So austerity, rising early. Sattvic, it's about communication austerity. I want to just tell you what to do, and I want to praise, and I just want to do these roadblocks. I want to restrain my judgments, my praise, my analysis like that, and commit that you'll feel understood by me. It's austerity. So in every area of life. And common saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. Right? So it's a Sattvic principle, cleanliness. And then you go towards the platform for godliness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome.
Here you are.
Nice to see you, Alan.
I see you.
Welcome.
I was worried about you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I rented a Tesla, and I didn't realize the charging takes an hour. So I had to park somewhere, get a supercharger, plug it in. And, yeah, but it worked out though. It goes, for what I lost in time, I made up in speed. I just within speed limit boundaries, of course. So.
Glad you can make it.
Right, yeah.
Hare Krishna. And truthfulness. Truthfulness is also a Sattvic principle. And of course, there's truthfulness in the ordinary sense. Truthful, and we trust ourselves, trust others. And then there's truthfulness, I'll call it in that transcendental sense, commitment to give our lives and our words towards a direct experience of absolute truth, of complete reality, a direct experience of the self, turning towards itself and turning towards source in a devotional attitude, with devotional consciousness. Because, okay, we have our particular characters, Patrick and Prima Lynn, Karen, Alan, Ian, Marie, David. And this is for 20 some years, 30 years, 1 year, 80 years. And after 100 years, what will be of these characters? Well, people will remember after 1,000, after hundreds of trillions of years, and hundreds of trillions of years, that's not even a lightning flash compared to eternity. So what's our so eternally, the absolute truth, absolute means good, it's good, it's valid, in all time and space. So that's in our spirit soul, not this body, I'm serving Krishna. So dedication to that, that's truthfulness in a profound transcendental way. So creating a Sattvic home, Sattvic lifestyle, and yeah, to accept, to understand the context that it requires commitment, because the world doesn't support sattva or transcendence. So that's like, if we are really sincere to make progress in that regard, then it requires commitment. And so I've been in this body for about 59 years, and I'd say generally it's getting more and more challenging. It's more and more challenging. Just like I would say, probably 60 years ago, like media influences, were more Sattvic, and I know that those in raising children, it's important to be conscious what are we exposing them to in terms of media, in terms of friends media, things like that. And so it requires commitment. It requires, otherwise these rajas, tamasic influences, they're just there. Actually, I was this past Wednesday, I played some tennis, and it was 12 of us. We had three courts of doubles. And anyhow, so because the courts were, this group has been playing like since the 80s. I first came in 2006 through Daru Burma. It's like my partner production. Okay, so through Daru Burma. And sometimes I would go practically a year without going. Sometimes play every week for a few weeks. Anyhow, so I played, and the courts where we were playing, they're like under construction or something. Yeah, it's shocking. How could the city do it? So they're not available for for like a year or something. So then there's these other courts in another part of Gainesville that's further from Latcher. Okay, and so we go to these other courts. What's that?
That's austerity.
Yeah, it is austerity. So now, okay, I have a philosophical point.
Yeah,
Stay with me. You need to stay with me here. Okay, so, so these courts where we're going, and we had a great time and all. So these courts are named, I'm not going to go into names, but they're named after a famous person who grew up in that neighborhood and knows what I'm talking about. Okay? Right. Now, most of these fellows who I'm playing with, they're a little older than me, if you can imagine. A little older. There's some, like Elliot. Elliot is there.
Oh,
yeah. So he's younger than me, so there's some who are younger, but most are a little older than me. And nice guys. I'm not trying to say my tennis colleagues are saints or anything, but nice guys, and kind of like responsible life like that. And several, they were telling me because we were right there on the court, so between games. Some of them, they grew up in that neighborhood, and they knew this famous fellow, musician. They knew this famous fellow, and some of them, even in the 60s, they would go to the parties at his place, and they would describe that, and they were just whatever, typical teenagers in the 1960s, so there's a wildness, but they say what he was into was even too out, they just needed, I could not sit on the Vyasasana and describe what was going on at his parties. I really couldn't describe Okay. And they said, I just like this really degraded fellow. Like that. And then, anyhow, so I just processed this. So, okay. So, but, you know, they grew up in the same neighborhood. None of them were close friends, but same school, things like that. Okay, then the city, so like, the city is, like, they're not honoring George or John or Greg, my tennis partners, who are basically, you know, fine fellows, decent, responsible, you know, professional, contributing to the community. They're not honoring them, but they're on the, so the, and this is very indicative of the direction of the culture or anti-culture of society, what society's honoring and like that. And this, I don't know the famous person personally, so maybe, you know, maybe God was very dear to him. But from the descriptions, like, okay, he played guitar and danced on stage like a monkey. And okay, so they have they name things after him. So lower modes tend to be what's celebrated. I'm just using that as an example. So yeah. So yeah, it's Maya is a great devotee of Krishna, and it's okay. That's one devotee we can declare war on. And in fact, we need to declare war on the force of illusion, the force of the lower self. If we want to really cultivate higher values, higher self, the self turning towards itself, in self-realization, turning towards Source, God, in a spirit of loving devotion. Okay, I'll read the verse again, then I'll be glad to hear your comments and any questions you might have. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashat kamanamayam sukha sangena padnati jnana sangena chanaga. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode develop knowledge, but they become conditioned by the concept of happiness. Okay. There's a lot in the verse and purport I didn't even touch upon. One thing before we open up for questions is this, because when I first read the purport, this jumped out at me. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries. So it doesn't say man in the mode of goodness that there are no miseries. Material, the context is this is a temporary place full of suffering. Okay, so to the extent that we're in goodness, then we're not disturbed by the disturbances. Mm-hmm. And if I'm like maybe more towards tamas and one disturbance after rajas, I'm so disturbed, but I'll fix it. And if I just make this adjustment, I'll just get her to stop doing that and get him to start doing that. And then the economy and then my health, and then there'll be no more disturbances. I'll be a happy man.
So tiring.
It's the eternal carrot on the stick there. And so in goodness, it's like I accept. Yeah, this is a place of disturbance. This is a place of disturbance, and I don't need to be disturbed. I get to steadily do my devotional service for God and be undisturbed in the face of disturbances. In fact, be joyful in the face of disturbances, realizing everything as a special opportunity for self-realization and God realization. Hare Krishna, thanks for listening. Thanks for your presence. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, a few years ago I read a book. Oh, is he speaking?
Marie.
A few years ago I read a book. It was about a Jesuit priest. And exactly what you're saying, it was in a very, very disturbing situation.
Yeah.
And during a war, and he was in Poland, so he was arrested, and then he spent 2 years in a prison where every day they would drill him, but the rest of the time he was in confinement, like alone. with no, he couldn't sit or lay down, otherwise they put him back. Only 1 meal, and one time a day, he will have an interrogatoire, like an interrogating. And 2 years of that. And after he did 25 years of Siberian work camp.
Yeah.
So that's, when it comes to disturbance in the material energy, is different than the government or whatever disturbance we experience in our lives.
Can give us a
very serious disturbance. And so he wrote a book, and his book, he wasn't disturbed by the disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't disturbed by the disturbance because he kept very clear his purpose. And his purpose as a Jesuit was to continue his mass every day, and then to also clear his heart. He had so many realizations that clear, like whatever religion was there in his training, to really come to the essence of spirituality. And then when he arrived at the camp, after 2 years of prison, he arrived at the camp for 25 years. And at the camp, those who believe in God, or the priests, were the lower of the lower.
Yeah.
Like everybody else was kind of teasing them and torturing them.
And they were especially persecuted.
And also persecuted. They had less food and all that. And he continued his mission. And little by little, he supported other prisoners to come to Mass and to follow the Mass and to take the Eucharist. And he continued like that, and he survived the 25 years of Siberia. Like, in a sense, very horrid situation, not even having food every day, and then not being disturbed by all that.
Yeah, great example. That's He Leadeth Me.
Yeah.
And very inspiring book, very inspiring spiritual person there.
Yeah. I wanted to speak about there is cultivating sattva. You spoke about that at the beginning of your class.
Yeah.
Cultivating sattva, and then cultivating sattva give us a platform for transcendence.
Yeah.
And then there is cultivating transcendence that automatically brings
us towards sattva. Yeah.
And it seems that in the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us, it's like both are merged.
Both are merged.
It's not like one for the other, the other one for one. It's practically, if we live the lifestyle of Bhakti Yoga, if we live by the instruction of Srila Prabhupada, automatically we are living sattva. Yeah. Even so, it may not be our goal.
Right.
Like we raise up in the morning to dance and chant, and we eat certain food. So automatically, it's so amazing how the lifestyle that's given to us as a lifestyle of Bhakti Yoga is sattva, that we don't really need to put any separate endeavor in it.
True.
Like that. There is no separate endeavor. And even more amazing, like I've been studying Ayurvedic medicine and different kind of medicine for 25 years, 26 years. And lately I've been following one teacher. I have always changed teacher. Every few years I have a new teacher. But right now I have a teacher, and she's Christian. Yeah. And she presents a health principle from the Bible. Yeah. And she quotes the Bible, one verse after another. She's so good with the Bible. And she presents the same principle coming from the Bible, the same Sattvic principle, very clearly. And so not only like the lifestyle of Bhakti Yoga naturally brings to the platform of goodness where we are not disturbed and for practicing transcendence, and we also get to have the healthiest habits that a human being can cultivate. Yeah. And that's quite a many perks.
Yeah, it's quite a complete program. Yeah. Thank you, Melanie. George.
I really appreciated this verse. and specifically the idea that even in the mode of sattva, there are pitfalls. You know,
Yeah.
There is room for us to attract, exploitation from material energy.
Yeah.
Earlier in the week we've been talking how we are victimized. You were sharing how we are victimized by material energy, and how even though it's hard for us to hear that, we attract this victimization. And I'm really appreciating kind of the subtle distinction of that. Even when I'm doing the right thing, quote unquote, or I'm trying to cultivate this behavior, to always remember Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's that verse that he said, always have of more tolerant and more humble and with sincerity.
You have a meditation on that humility verse.
Yeah, because I've been trying to be more in the consciousness of like, what am I attracting to myself when I get a thought, and it would be a thought about envy or jealousy for someone, or lustful, or so forth. I've been trying to cultivate this week like more of an awareness about how I'm attracting, the pain that's to come.
Yes.
And so hearing this verse about even sattva, kind of like material energy always kind of being there as a, that there could be opportunity that I'm attracting kind of these pitfalls is very enlightening. And so also, like we were talking, how Prabhupada was speaking to that one group where they were saying that they wanted to make sure that no weak person was victimized by a strong person, and how our goal, Prabhupada's mission, is to make everyone strong.
Yes.
So my question, I guess, is more about being strong. Does that, in that sense of like being, I guess, is being strong being like a transcendental or liberated person, or is it more of like a process of aiming towards sattva, and then kind of even in sattva understanding that we're still in material energy, and there will always do not be proud or not be arrogant, to always have sincerity and humility? That was mostly my question.
Good. Thanks for your sharing and your question. Yeah, so that part of that verse and purport, the verse and purport is so we have sattva, we can become proud. We can become proud that I'm happier than others, I'm more intelligent than others, I'm more knowledgeable than others, and then that pride is a weed in the heart, and then we will tend not to become really urgent about transcendence. And then George was referring to a few days ago, we had a morning program. It was talking about in 1944, Srila Prabhupada wrote an article, and he gave a Vaishnava viewpoint on theosophy. So theosophy, still, when I was in undergrad, 70s, 80s in Pennsylvania, it was a kind of a cool alternative approach to philosophy. Madame Blavatsky. And so apparently it was quite popular in India, maybe still is, at least in the 40s. And so Prabhupada was quoting Blavatsky, the Theosophist Creed, saying essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially we will not rest until there is no more oppression of the weak by the strong. Right? We will like that until there's no more oppression of the weak by the strong, and it's like that. And so Prabhupada said, well, that's nice. It's kind of sentimental. And Prabhupada said, the Vaishnava approach is we make everyone strong so no one gets oppressed.
So radical.
Yeah. So I appreciate your question, George. So of course it doesn't mean. So Prabhupada's approach is everyone should go to the gym once a day and swim in swim 40 laps every week, or I don't know. So yeah, I mean, what you guessed, George, that's the idea, is that, well, first of all, as we cultivate sattva, like cleanliness is next to godliness, as we cultivate sattva, then we're stronger. Then we're less susceptible to really degrade the soul.
Less attached.
What's that?
Less attached.
Less attached, exactly. And then being fixed in transcendence, because the nature of the self is to be attached. The idea, just be unattached. Great, it's just impossible, so it's really not good. No, it's not a bad thing. Our choice is whether to be attached to matter or spirit. So if we're attached to spirit, that means we're attached, my attachment is to serving Krishna with love and devotion. My attachment is to pleasing my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. That's my attachment. And then when more and more, when that's our attachment, we're not attached to any gross or subtle, relative, temporary, material things. Subtle can mean like attachment to fame, being adored, profit. Okay. When we're not attached to anything that will ever be devastated by time, and our attachment is only to that which is spiritual, then I'm unstoppable. Then no material mode, then no one can victimize me. Because right? Why are we victimized? We're victimized because due to material attachment, we have a tendency towards greed and lust and lording it over others and profit, fame, adoration, distinction. Okay, so we could say that's a weakness when the soul is attached to those material things, and that weakness, then we're setting ourselves up to be victimized, whether by other people or other groups or whatever it is. So,
Boomerang.
right, what's that?
It's like a boomerang.
Like a boomerang comes back at us. Right.
I got a question.
Yeah, Alan.
So, just to reiterate that, the first one is that first thing you put in, you said that one is, you said, make every, like, opposed to the people that are oppressed.
Yeah.
Opposed to people being oppressed by the strong.
Right.
Make everyone strong so no one is weak and depressed.
There you go.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay. And then also, what does it look like to be attached to the spiritual? Now, if someone like is attached to spiritual, what does that look like?
What it looks like is, for example, we feel ourselves enthusiastic to hear these words of self-realization, to hear the words of God, and to discuss them, and to deepen our realization, and less enthusiastic for whatever trash might be there on the internet or literature that doesn't move us to self-realization and God. We're attached to association that moves us to God. We're attached to singing the glories of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. We're attached to only eating food that is spiritual because it's been offered with love and devotion to them. We become inspired. We become inspired to rise early and engage in these processes of hearing, chanting, singing, dancing in enthusiasm for service of God. We become attached to activities that are pleasing to God rather than just temporarily not pleasing, but gratifying for my temporary senses, temporary mind, temporary ego. So for example, like everything we do in this 3-hour program, we develop attachment to that, and we develop detachment from things that take us away from experiencing ourselves as spirit, soul, and as part and parcel of God.
And so, how do we know when we're doing something that's moving us towards God?
I appreciate your questions. Yes. So, of course, as we go on that path, we develop more and more of an intuition. And at the same time, your question is very good, because right now, most of us were in we're alienated from ourselves. And so how do we know we're absorbed in self-deceptions and things that we might tell ourselves we're spiritual, or really just very decadent material like that. So that's where it's helpful. No, it's more than helpful. It's important to access and accept guidance from those who are really good at this. Just like, say, if we take any field, if someone wants to become really good at physics, if someone wants to become really good at playing piano, and I could go, I'll just play whatever. I'm sure I'll become a Mozart pretty soon. Or I'll just think about it. I guess like physics will come to me. Come on, if I'm serious about it, like I don't know much about playing piano. I don't know much about physics. I'm going to find a qualified teacher, someone who mastered it. This person has written textbooks on physics, and they've got these PhDs and employed by NASA like that. Okay, let me read their books. Let me go to their courses. Here's an expert in guitar. Let me learn from them. So similarly, in self-realization, spiritual life, there are those who are masters. So we hear from them, and that helps us to make distinctions about what's going to move us forward on the path, and what might be a self-deception, and what will interfere with our progress.
To actually model people that are already on that path, or who have mastered an aspect of it that you want to master, and kind of just match and model, copy paste.
I like the way you phrase it.
Yeah, that's my mind. Just how I gotta like dumb things.
Yeah,
to digest it.
Okay. So behind you there's a picture, and there's a lot of people in that picture, but there's 5 primary people, and their names are Shri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Shri Srivastava. Okay, so they appeared about 500 years ago, and they're without going too many details, but they're all pure masters in spiritual life, and so they're giving us this real. And so by copying and pasting, matching and modeling, as you say, so the main process they give us, and it's a whole lifestyle, but the main process they give us. Kaladoshini Deva Janasya Mahatma Kirtana Deva Krishna Mukta Sangha Ram Raja is chanting the names of God, and especially chanting and singing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Copy and paste that as much as possible, and then we'll experience. It won't just be theoretical. We experience ourselves cleansing the diamond from the dirt, experiencing ourselves as joyful spirits.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for your question. And for driving up from Orlando to be
here. Yeah. It was such a good drive. It was open, it was wide, it was so like natural, like it was, man, we don't get driving like that in Kansas City at all. Like open skies with palm trees everywhere. Yeah, the process of getting here was not.
Warm outside.
Yeah, warm outside.
In January.
Yeah, right now in my hometown, I got like a couple of messages. They're having a snowstorm right now. There's a huge snowstorm.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, right. Good timing. Yeah, my friend's like, bro, I'm in the house all day today because like I can't open my door because all the snow. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I'm like, when does it stop? He's like, Sunday night. I'm like, Sunday back. So it's like, it's perfect. I get back right when it's over. So
you didn't come just from Orlando. You came from Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City to Orlando. Hung out with Sage for a little bit, and now here. So
Sage was Alan's buddy in the advanced course.
Yeah.
We're a real buddy.
Yeah.
At 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. She's a personal trainer, so I can get advantage of everybody. I think I can get it. She was training me, and it was a good time. Take my word.
I wanted to make, like what you were saying earlier, when sometimes I want to describe transformative coaching, and it's so much about self-empowerment.
Yeah.
And self-empowerment in itself, to really be solid and real, it needs to go to self.
Yeah.
It cannot be, like self-empowerment doesn't exist in other modes. So in order to really create deep self-empowerment for people, we need to support them to Sattva.
Yeah, that's the name of our institute, Sattva Tov, right? About Sattvic communication skills. I mean, living at choice rather than reactively. So Sattva.
Yeah, and then what I see, that when people are supported to go to Sattva, then the door to transform, the door to spiritual life is open naturally, like it's organic. Yeah.
Naturally, yeah. That's what reading this verse itself reminds me of Prabhupada's introduction to Bhagavad Gita, where he says, just by cultivating sattva, knowledge, this verse talks about illuminate, sattva is illuminating, then one transcends their karma, one destroys their karma. And he just says, simply by being conscious, simply by sattva cultivation, we step out of our karma. How many?
I've had some breakthroughs this week with my consciousness. And what I've been doing is I've found some people who, like an expert.
Yes.
I found an expert, and I spoke about this last weekend, on helping people like deal with their food addiction.
Yeah.
And she's just phenomenal, and she's done lots of research, and she's helped hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people. And it's working, and there's lots of stories, and I'm just like, wow. And she's very inspirational, very loving, very intelligent. She doesn't drink alcohol. She doesn't eat meat. She encourages prayer, meditation. Really grounded, really intelligent. It's just like really inspiring personality. Like, she's so empowering. She's helping thousands and thousands of people. And maybe they want weight loss, and maybe some of them have eating disorders or eating, but whatever. She's helping people with food addiction. And I've implemented her program.
Yeah.
And I have no cravings. I'm disgusted at the idea of acting on it. It's only been a week, but I mean, I see this going on.
Yeah.
This is like so much more satisfying than snacking and eating foods that make me feel sick and give me a headache and feeling sick. You know, just so. And I've had food relationship with food that was not healthy for like since my childhood.
Yes.
So I just wanted to share, like, I'm experiencing separating from my lower self and living from my higher self. And I have it's like you were just saying, like, the karma, transcending karma.
You can feel that, you're experiencing it.
It's like, I just don't ever want to go back to living like that, because I have so much energy. I have like, for months I've been having trouble, having trouble getting out of bed to wake up and do chanting and start my day, like sleeping in and turning. I like set 4 alarms and turn them all off. Like I'm like trying to trick myself up, but it's not working. And anyway, I'm like popping out of bed, and I'm like have lots of energy, and I'm like really focused and productive, and I don't know, like, and I'm just happy. I'm like I feel free, like, because addiction and attachment to gratifying our lower self is like a prison.
It's like a prison.
Binding.
Binding.
But through finding experts and following the guidance, surrendering, like, hey, I'm not the expert. Right. Obviously. You know.
And see, as something that works, and you're experiencing success, you're experiencing results.
And it's very spiritual for me. I'm like I feel an integrity with food, but I also feel an integrity with my spiritual practice. Like, it's also training me to how to train. Like, it's training me and being my higher self in general about other areas of my life.
Yes. I
can do it. Like, I can go at night. There's a couple of practices. At night, I make a plan for what I would eat the next day, and then I follow the plan. But I can make a plan for other commitments and follow it. This is just a tool, but the point really I'm bringing to you for this spiritual class is like, it's possible to free ourselves from our lower self and live from our higher self.
Okay, I see your joy and sense of liberation.
Like I can live my life purpose when I choose to be. It's just a matter of choice, you know. And I've experienced like a thought came to mind of the food that I would eat that like I would have been attached to. I was like, I'm not even gonna think about that. Like, why spend my time contemplating that? Like, I'm not doing it. So I'm not doing it. Like, I just have a firm feeling, and I'm really excited about the potential for, you know, the training I'm going through, and how that will mean becoming more Sattvic and serving Srila Prabhupada and living my life purpose. And anyway, so I just want to share. Yeah, I feel empowered. Like, Yeah, so it's possible. And I think sometimes we feel certain areas of our lives, each of us, we've lived with that for decades, like a weakness.
Yeah.
We maybe have lived with it for decades. And my experience of this is that I wasn't ready and Krishna wasn't revealing the path.
Yes.
But a few weeks ago, I experienced
Real breakthrough.
defeat. Well, no, I felt defeated.
Yes.
Went down.
Like I had a breakdown, and with several things that I was feeling so
Yes.
out of integrity with, and it revolved all around self-discipline.
Yes.
Several things. And I let myself finally feel it instead of thinking, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm not supposed to hate myself. But I let myself just express
Experience,
I hate
yes.
myself.
Yeah.
It sounds like it does not sound good, but I needed to get a voice. And I cried and I thought, I'll never change and then I'm going to die. And I was like, I really kind of just had a big emotional release like, at home with my husband. And I feel like it just, and I even prayed to Krishna, I can't do this. I can't like overcome, I'm not overcoming these things and I need help, you know. And anyway, within a few weeks, I came across like a master at like overcoming your lower self. That's how I feel. And I'm like, this is a prayer answered and I feel hopeful. And we can't, I want others to feel hopeful. I don't want to share like what I've learned with people, that we can really overcome things that we've been hung around for decades that we don't want to act out anymore, you know. And thanks for hearing.
Thanks for sharing. I'm inspired by your sharing and personally moved. Thank you, Dominique. Rebecca.
So, someone just asked me, we were at a birthday party down over here before we came here for Jonah's little friend and Elaine's little friend. And one of the mothers came up to me and said, so how's your new house? How do you like your new house? And I was like, it's fine. I was like, you know, it's just different material miseries, but it's fine.
So the burden has shifted from this shoulder to that shoulder.
Yeah. And I was just like, but yeah. So anyway, that's really how I'm experiencing it. And I don't know. There's been something that has happened in this move that's really. I still feel I'm still very attached to Maya and material things, but I feel like maybe I made just a little bit of progress in this time when I moved. Like somehow, like maybe I'm a little less attached to where I'm living. Actually, I am. Like I'm a little bit less attached to the way it looks, and because I'm kind of getting the picture. Like I'm starting to understand that. Like I mean, it's just like it's a different decoration, but the same misery, like the same.
You can be miserable in a hut, or you can be miserable in a palace.
Yeah.
You can compare this to your last move a few years ago, and you have undoubtedly deeper realization that the context here is disturbance and misery and trouble. That's the context here, and the form might differ. And then in accepting that, then you're a lot more peaceful.
Yeah, and a lot less like, oh, this place, like a lot less just like
Fighting it.
Yeah, like I'm just like, oh, this is I'm also not like longing for something as much. That is, I'm not like, oh, I want this big house and I want it to look like this. And I mean, of course, I do have preferences and things that I would like, but I'm finding that I'm not as attached.
You're not as attached.
I'm just not as attached to those things because I'm just feeling a lot less attached and more peaceful inside, I guess, about not as disturbed.
I'm reminded of there's a well-known book called The Road Less Traveled by F. Scott Peck, and it's from the 70s. But the first line in the book, he writes, "Life is difficult. And he's a psychiatrist. I don't know if he's still alive. He was a psychiatrist. Life is difficult, and if we want to be unhappy, let's resist that fact. And the key to happiness is accepting life is difficult. And once one accepts that, then it doesn't matter anymore. Then we can go on with our purpose, our mission. And we resist that reality. Then he said, and these are the psychotic people I see. These are the neurotic people I see. This is myself when I'm neurotic. Resisting the context. Life is difficult.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that again, because I think the last time when we were at Marie's some months ago, and I had some new realizations, and I was kind of, in my experience, realizing just the world that I was living in.
Yeah.
Like I was like really coming to terms with it.
Yes.
You like shared the same, you shared the same quote with me. And so I guess that's just kind of where my journey has been.
You're coming back to the same process. You're not going in circles, but you're in an upward spiral. That's what I'm seeing as you share.
So.
That's what I'm seeing.
That's encouraging.
Yes.
To see that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks for your sharing, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that in the next part of our program, copying and pasting from the Panchatattva, we have a direct experience of the Shravana Kirtan process in the form of japa chanting. And we have japa beads. And we can chant one round in unison. So we'll all start at the same time. Thank you. We'll chant a round of japa, and I think most everyone knows the process. Generally recommended to chant with right hand, thumb, and middle finger. It's recommended, if reasonably possible, to avoid the beads touching the ground or our feet. And the idea, well, the principle of this chanting is that material sound, there's a difference between the sound and the object. So if I'm thirsty and I say, water, 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 I'm still thirsty, but there's a difference between the sound water and the actual object. But the absolute platform, the sound is identical with the object that it signifies. So God is absolute. So when we chant the names of God, Hare, Krishna, Ram, it works for other names of God too. Adonai, Elohim, Allah, like that. The same, there's also distinctions. This Hare Krishna mantra contains particularly intimate names of God to move us towards that most closest relationship. So a name of God, like we chant Krishna, then the name Krishna is identical with Krishna. So Krishna is there dancing on our tongue. As we chant more and more, we get more and more realization of the non-difference between the name of God and God. So the process, it's a process of meditation, and we do our best to focus our mind and power of hearing and full consciousness on each word of the mantra. So let's start with the bead next to the large bead. And there's 108 beads on the strand, not including the large bead. Let's start with the bead next to the large bead and chant one round of japa in unison. And let's begin. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for chanting Hare Krishna. And before serving prasad, we'll have some kirtan and then prasad. Narayan, would you like to lead? Thank you.
Yeah.
No special instruction.
Yeah.
You choose, but it could be dancing.
Okay.
Whatever weapon you choose.
All right.